Hello everyone, it's Imran here. Welcome back to the video. So, I am going to react to another Thomas and Friends audio story by Narrowgauge. This one was uploaded literally 8 months ago. Months ago it was, well, 2 days ago, exactly 8 months ago. And this one is called Zero. Yes, this is going to be Narrowgauge's take on the infamous Timothy the Ghost Train. Now, for those of you in the Thomas fandom who don't know who Timothy the Ghost Train is, basically Timothy's, or the whole thing about Timothy the Ghost Train originated back, I think, in the 90s. It did, when they were working on New Face for Thomas for a new season of the television series. Someone did a scary looking Thomas face as a bit of a joke, which got the nickname Timothy. And then we had, roundabout in 2013, we had a creepypasta called Ghost Train, which essentially talked about this original lost car of the season 2 episode Ghost Train, where we were introduced to Timothy, this silver E2 tank engine who became possessed with rage and apparently fell off the viaduct, and the rest is history. And after the face sculpt, that was when Timothy's story was born. Obviously, we know the Ghost Train creepypasta where he became possessed and fell off the viaduct was part of the original cut of the season 2 episode Ghost Train. And we all know in the fandom that it's pretty much been done to death by now, with the amount of creations about Timothy, about him being this possessed demon of brother of Thomas he is. Well, Narrowgauge is now going to try out his own version of is going to be presented to us his own version of Timothy. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. It is Timothy right there, but I don't know what Timothy is going to be what Timothy is going to look like in this story. But we do know judging from this title, it is something to do with Timothy. It is because it is Zero. So this does take place after the season 2 episode Ghost Train. It does, so yeah, it should make for an interesting affair. It should, to see what Narrogage's take on Timothy is. Link for react to in the description down below as always. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get straight into this. This actually is what I've been looking forward to after I started to react to his audio productions. This is what I've been really looking forward to, this one. I think even more so than Easton the other Tank Engine. Oh, before we get into it, by the way, the last one I did react to by him was Henry and Trevor. Might check that out. Will be in the top right corner of the screen. We'll go check that out. But enough rambling. Let's go ahead and get straight into this video. Link to it will be in the description down below as always. Warning. The following video contains visuals, sounds, and subject matters that some viewers may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Thank you. Okay? Now for his intro. Let's see what his take on Timothy is.
One afternoon, Percy was bringing some trucks to Edward's station. It was a simple task, but he didn't mind. It had been a while since he last left Thomas's branch line, and he enjoyed seeing other sights of Sodor. He especially loved the viaduct that stretched across a huge valley, with a calm and clean river below.
So the viaduct, I do believe that it is between Henry's Forest and Edward Station. I do think the viaduct that appears in the series, I think it makes sense to have it between Henry's Forest and Edward Station. It just makes
wonderful sight. So much sense. Percy was also very fond of Edward, and was looking forward to seeing him again. The feeling was clearly mutual, as the old engine smiled when he heard the little green engine's whistle. Percy brought his trucks into the station, and Edward pulled up alongside him. "Hello, Percy," he said. "How have things been?" "Oh, very well, thank you," replied Percy cheerfully. "I've had good runs, and the trucks have been behaving." "Very good. And what about Thomas? He's getting along all right?" "Oh, he's doing good. A bit of a handful sometimes," chuckled Percy. "Though I did put him in his place one time, when I made him think I was a ghost."
"Oh, reference to Ghost Train,"
laughed Edward. "Do tell." Percy explained the time he crashed into a cart of lime, and he was as white as a ghost. It was just after I told him about this ghost of an engine who fell into a gap or something like that, and he called me a silly little engine. Edward's
Timothy's
face
story?
suddenly darkened. Into a gap, you say? Yes, though driver said it was a made-up one on the television. It wasn't actually real. Yes, well, I wouldn't say it was entirely made up, said Edward
We're gonna get to
quietly.
Timothy's story, we are.
Percy was confused. You mean driver did see a real ghost? Oh, no, that's not what I meant, Percy. I'm sure what your driver saw on television was a fictional story, but sometimes fiction can be based on truth. This engine that fell into a gap, I'm all too familiar with it. It's actually well known amongst those who know Sodor's history. Well, what's it about? Asked Percy. I can share it if you want, but I must warn you, it's not a pleasant tale. Percy thought. Edward wouldn't usually give a warning before telling a story,
But
so
this
he
one
was feeling
is.
a little nervous. In the end, though, his curiosity got the better of him. Please, tell me, he finally said. Very well, sighed Edward. And so, he began.
Here we go.
A long time ago, the island of Sodor consisted of several smaller railways that were disconnected from one another. Eventually, though, plans were made to have them all joined together as one, creating what we now know as the Fat Controllers Railway.
Or
This
the
change
Northwestern
included many
Railway.
developments, digging tunnels, forming new stations, and one in particular, constructing a huge viaduct across the valley, which still stands today. To assist with all of this, a tank engine was brought in from the mainland to work on one of the smaller railways.
There he is.
This engine was unusual. It was a newly built prototype, one of a kind. As it was rushed to the island, it never got a name, a number, or even a proper paint job.
Oh. I do still would prefer that Timothy would have the number 0 on him as he looks like it, but I do like the fact that he's like a prototype E2 tank engine here. He definitely looks like a prototype E2 tank engine. That's probably what my ideal Timothy would be. Just a prototype E2 tank engine.
It still wore its grey undercoat, which wore off very easily. The engine had nothing, and eventually picked up the name Zero.
Still prefer to call it
Now,
Timothy.
Zero wasn't a bad sort, from what workers and engines have said. In fact, it was rather friendly, and always eager to please. It was truly a shame, then, that it wasn't a very successful engine.
Oh.
Being an early prototype, Zero came with many faults in its design that greatly hindered its performance. You know how Henry used to be before his rebuild at Crewe? It was like that, except it wasn't a small firebox. Rather, Zero lacked any real pulling power. It could pull trains and shunt trucks, but struggled greatly with heavier loads. For many of the other engines on the railway, it was seen as a great source for teasing and bullying. Zero would often find itself in a corner as endless arrays of insults were thrown at it. You keep to the sidings, weakling, the engines said. Make way for the proper engines. Zero never had the strength to fight back. It tried its best to be useful, but the heavy workloads and constant berating from others made life harder than it already was. There were a small handful of engines that stood by Zero's side and gave as much support as possible, though it seemed to do no good. Then, one fateful night, everything changed. There was an evening passenger train bound for the last station on the line, just before the valley where the viaduct was still being built. However, the engine scheduled for the train had broken down. and no one else was available. Except for Zero. There was much concern from many as Zero backed onto the coaches. The engine itself was determined. No matter the strain, it would ensure the train would reach the other end of the line. Once the guard's whistle had sounded, Zero huffed and puffed out of the station. Its cheeks were already red when the last coach left the platform, but it carried on regardless. The train wasn't going too slow, but for Zero it wasn't enough. He tried even harder, and eventually reached a more favourable pace. By that point, however, they were far behind schedule. Not far from the station, they approached a loop where a goods train sat waiting. The engine stared in disbelief at Zero and scowled at it. "Pathetic," it wheezed. "To think that you believe you could be worthy of a train like that.
Oh no, this is gonna
Do
put him to
yourself
the
a
edge.
favour, weakling. Throw yourself off the line when you're done. We don't need engines like you."
That's gonna push him to the edge.
Now, no one is certain what happened next. Zero's driver said the regulator just stopped working, and they couldn't slow down. The goods engine claimed that when the insult was thrown, Zero looked furious, almost deranged.
He was pushed to the
Whatever
edge.
the reason, the train began going faster and faster.
Oh dear.
The engine's wheels
dear.
blurred, and the coaches rattled violently. The last station came into view, but the train merely sped past, startling all who stood on the platform. Once they realised this, the guards slammed on the brakes in the van. The only result was loud screeching wheels, firing huge sparks in all directions. The driver and fireman fought for control, pressing hard on the regulator and brakes. All attempts were futile. Zero didn't slow. In fact, it seemed to be going even faster. It quickly sunk in where they were heading. They were now on a long stretch of line, and at the end, the valley. The valley came closer and closer. Workmen who were on a night shift ran to safety. The driver only saw one option. He grabbed a pole and thrusted it into the fireman's hands. "Quick, get out there and uncouple the train!" Any fear the fireman had was ignored, as he clambered out the cab and waddled on the running board. Holding onto the bunker, he reached down and tried to grab the chain with the pole. The swaying engine nearly had him lose his footing several times, and it seemed impossible to pull the chain. But he tried, over and over and over again. And then, "Got it!" he shouted as he lifted the chain off the hook. The coaches began trailing behind, and the crew leapt off the engine. As for Zero, well, no one knew what it was thinking. No one got a chance, as it left the rails and plunged into the gap.
Holy cow. Holy cow.
Edward took a deep breath. He was so focused on his story, he hadn't really been looking at Percy. Not surprisingly, when he did, the little green engine was in shock.
No
The
wonder.
passenger train thankfully stopped before reaching the end. Not one human was harmed. Rightfully so, the driver and fireman were dubbed heroes of the railway. They showed remarkable bravery in such a dire situation.
Or Timothy, I should say.
There wasn't much care for their engine though, Edward sighed. The remains were fished out and left in the yard. Some parts were salvageable, but otherwise, Zero was lost. No one seemed to really care. By that point, some other engines had already been bought or loaned. "And so, the engine is now a ghost?" Percy asked, timidly. Edward looked down at his buffers, pondering. Well, that's more so speculation, Percy. Some say that every year, on the date of the accident, it runs again.
There it is!
Not as a
There's
danger, as some believe, but as a warning to others. And some even claim to have seen it, plunging into the gap, shrieking like a lost soul. But how true that is, I can't really say.
I think Timothy would be a ghost.
Such a
Zero would be a
shame,
ghost.
said Percy.
He would be a ghost.
I would have liked to have met this Zero. It did sound like a nice engine.
I think he did become a ghost.
Indeed, replied Edward softly. If it did meet you, I have no doubt you would have made it feel very welcome. Soon, it was evening, and it was time to return home. Percy said goodbye to Edward and set off down the main line. Eventually, Percy arrived at the viaduct. It was his usual appearance, standing tall and proud above the river. What should be a highlight of the journey, though, now felt very unsettling. Percy peered down into the valley, a chill running in his boiler. He could picture it now. An engine, out of control, leaping off the line, and just falling. He looked away and puffed safely across the viaduct, staying completely silent out of respect.
Wow. Wow, I don't know if this is the best. This probably might be the best take on Timothy I've ever seen. I like the fact that he's like a prototype E2 tank engine with a silvery, I think between a silvery grey colour, and I like how Timothy just wanted to be useful, but obviously his prototype design obviously held him back, and the bullying is simply what pushed him to the edge. It did. He wanted to try and prove himself to be useful, and came at the cost of his life. It kind of reminds me of the Misty Valley Ghost engine. He wanted to be useful, and well, came at the cost of his life as well. I mean, that's horrible, just to be bullied, and you're trying to prove a point, only for it, like I said, to come at the expense of your life right there. I mean, I do like to think that Timothy does become a ghost. I think my ideal Timothy would be a prototype silver greyish E2 tank engine, obviously with zero on the side. And as for how Timothy could look in his ghost appearance, I think it's just a black, rather than, that face, I think we can just go with, a black smoke box, the black smoke box door. I think that would be my ideal Timothy. A somewhat silver grayish prototype E2 tank engine with just a smoke box face. But if you do have a headcanon on Timothy, the ghost engine, Jane, and how would you write him in a Lost Episode creepypasta? Let me know in the comments down below, because I do want to write my own Thomas and Friends Lost Episode creepypastas. I do. I plan to do one based on A Part of Me Stayed Behind. I plan to do one based on the Hearth engine, one based on the Kildane Experiment, and obviously one based on Timothy, Slender engine, and also the Halloween special. I don't know if there's any more ghost engines I'm missing, but any ghost engine that the fandom basically does is that I want to do Lost Episode creepypastas on them. So, yeah, I really want to do some Lost Episode creepypastas. I don't know when they'll come out, but we'll just have to wait and see. But I actually do like this take on Timothy. I do. I really do. It was really a change of pace. He did actually say, I remember reading a community post of the video before he started reacting to it, that he was a bit worried of how people would react to it. But luckily, this video received a positive reception, and for good reason as well. Well, I do believe that Timothy can be done right It's just got to take very careful storytelling it has to make sure you get Timothy right. And let me know what you thought of this take in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, or if you have your own take on Timothy. You do want to see my previous Thomas reaction whether it's an audio story or Trains adaptation. I'll have a playlist up in the top right corner of your screen right now. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button for me. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this audio story I reacted to. Also let me know in the comments down below what other videos you want me to react to next. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on TikTok. Links to both of them will be in the description down below. Share this video, subscribe if you're new here, and that bell to get notified when I upload new videos, and I post in the community tab. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!